There's a strange stage in learning English where being correct is no longer enough. You say something, nobody corrects you, nobody looks confused, but the moment you hear how a fluent speaker says the same thing, you think, wait, why does their English sound so effortless, while mine sounds like English from a lesson? That difference is not an accident. There are 7 small habits making your English sound unnatural, and some of them are probably hiding inside sentences you use every day. Let's find them. Habit 1. You build English from single words instead of natural phrases. You may know thousands of English words and still sound unnatural. Why? Because knowing a word and knowing how English actually uses that word are 2 completely different skills. Imagine you want to tell someone you made an error. You know the word mistake, so your brain begins building. I did a mistake. The listener understands you. The meaning is clear. But a fluent speaker naturally says, I made a mistake. The problem was not grammar knowledge. You simply stored mistake as a lonely word, instead of storing the natural combination, make a mistake. And this happens everywhere. You learn, decision, but what you actually need in conversation is, make a decision. You learn, attention, but English gives you, pay attention. You learn, progress, but people say, make progress. You learn, chance, but you hear, give it a chance. You learn, mind, but real conversations are full of, I changed my mind. This is one of the biggest differences between knowing English and having English ready to use. Think about how many vocabulary lists you have studied. Maybe you wrote, avoid, to stay away from something, realize, to suddenly understand, expect, to think something will happen, afford, to have enough money for something. Good, you learned the meanings, but when conversation begins, your brain still has to build everything around those words. Now compare that with learning. I'm trying to avoid, I just realized that, I wasn't expecting, I can't afford to. Those pieces are immediately useful. Someone asks, why aren't you eating dessert? Your brain already has, I'm trying to avoid eating too much sugar. Someone changes the meeting time. Oh, I just realized I have another appointment then. Someone surprises you. Wow, I wasn't expecting that. Someone suggests an expensive trip. I'd love to go, but I can't afford it right now. Now your English is moving in ready-made pieces instead of individual words. And this is important. I am not telling you to memorize thousands of complete sentences. That would create a different problem. You want to collect flexible phrases, small pieces that can change depending on the situation. Take, I'm not used to. You can create, I'm not used to waking up this early. I'm not used to speaking English every day. I'm not used to working from home. I'm not used to this weather. One pattern gives you dozens of possible sentences. Take, it took me a while to. Now, it took me a while to understand it. It took me a while to get comfortable. It took me a while to find the place. It took me a while to get used to his accent. That is powerful vocabulary learning because you are not only learning what words mean, you are learning how thoughts are normally built in English. This is also why some learners know fewer words than you, but somehow sound more natural. They may not know 10 different synonyms for difficult, but they comfortably say, I'm having a hard time with this. They may not know an advanced word for uncertainty, but they naturally say, I'm not really sure about that. They may not know sophisticated vocabulary for disappointment, but they can say, it wasn't as good as I expected. Nothing there is advanced, but it sounds natural because the words belong together. So here is a better way to learn vocabulary from today. When you find a new word, never take the word alone. Suppose you hear point. Don't just write point = an idea or argument. Listen for the English around it. That's a good point. I see your point. The point is, what's the point? You've got a point. Now imagine how useful that becomes in conversation. Your friend explains why they disagree with you. Instead of desperately building a response, you already have, yeah, I see your point. Someone says something you had not considered. Actually, that's a good point. You want to explain the main idea. The point is, we don't have enough time. One ordinary word has suddenly become conversational English. Now try happen. Don't only learn happen. Collect. What happened? It happened to me too. I don't know what happened. It just happened. What happens if? Again, these are pieces you can actually reach for when speaking. And here is a simple test you can use. Pick an English word you know. Maybe decision. Now close your eyes and immediately create 3 natural sentences with it. If you understand the word but need 20 seconds to figure out how to use it, that word is probably still passive vocabulary. Your next job is not to memorize the definition again. Your job is to meet that word inside natural phrases until your brain learns its neighbors. This changes how you should watch English videos too. Most learners hear, "I ended up staying home because the weather was terrible." They notice terrible because maybe it is new. But an experienced learner notices, "I ended up," that little phrase is gold. Now practice. "I ended up staying home." "I ended up buying it." "We ended up talking for hours." "I ended up taking a different job." Suddenly one phrase gives you 4 completely different ideas. Or you hear, "I was about to leave when he called." Do not only understand the sentence, steal the useful structure. I was about to, then, I was about to eat, I was about to call you, I was about to go to bed, I was about to ask the same thing. Now that phrase belongs to you. This is how natural English slowly enters your speaking. Not because you memorized a dictionary, because you repeatedly noticed how English likes to arrange itself. So here is your challenge. For the next 7 days, stop collecting 20 random vocabulary words every day. Instead, collect 5 phrases you could genuinely imagine yourself saying. Not rare expressions, not impressive vocabulary, useful English. Maybe, "I didn't realize that," "it depends on," "I'm not really into," "I ended up," "the thing is." Then make 3 personal sentences with each one. Say them aloud. And during the day, look for a chance to use at least one, because the goal is not, "I learned 5 new phrases." The goal is, 5 new pieces of English became available to my mouth. That is a completely different kind of learning. Eventually, when someone asks you a question, you will notice something changing. You will not need to assemble every answer word by word. Whole pieces will begin arriving together. To be honest, the thing is, "I'm not sure if," "it depends on," "I ended up," "I didn't mean to," and suddenly your English feels smoother, not because you learned harder words, but because you finally stopped making every word travel alone. Don't just learn English words, learn the company they keep. Habit 2. You try to sound advanced, and your English starts sounding less natural. There is a strange mistake that often appears after your English gets better. When you were a beginner, you were happy if you could communicate the idea, but now you know more vocabulary. You have studied formal expressions, you know synonyms, you have seen advanced words in books, articles, exams, and vocabulary lessons. So when you speak, you start rejecting the easiest sentence. Someone asks, "Did you like the restaurant?" The natural answer appears first. "Yeah, it was really good." But your brain says, "Good is too basic." So you search for something more impressive. Yes, the restaurant was extremely satisfactory, grammatically possible. But suddenly you sound like you are writing a customer service report instead of talking to a friend. This happens to many learners because they confuse advanced English with natural English. They think better English must mean longer words, more complicated structures, and expressions that sound intelligent. But fluent speakers often choose incredibly simple language. Someone asks, "How was your trip?" A natural answer might be, "It was great, I had such a good time." Not, "The journey was an exceptionally enjoyable experience." Someone asks, "Why didn't you go?" You could simply say, "I was too tired, so I stayed home." You do not need, "Due to considerable exhaustion, I decided not to attend." Imagine saying that to your friend. Nothing is technically wrong with it, but it belongs to a completely different kind of communication. And that is the key. Natural English is not the most advanced English you know. It is the English that fits the moment. This is why vocabulary level alone cannot make you sound natural. You need something else, choice. You need to know when, "I don't know," is better than, "I am uncertain regarding that matter." When, "I forgot," is better than, "It completely escaped my memory." When, "I'm really tired," is better than, "I am experiencing considerable fatigue." When, "That surprised me," is better than, "I found that occurrence rather astonishing." The advanced versions may have situations where they work, but everyday conversation usually rewards clarity, ease, and connection. Now think about your own English. Have you ever known a simple word but stopped speaking because you were searching for a better one? Maybe you wanted to say, "The movie was funny," but suddenly you thought, "Funny is too easy." What is a more advanced word? Amusing? Hilarious? Entertaining? Comical? Now you have 4 choices fighting inside your head. Meanwhile, the conversation has moved on. This is one of the hidden ways advanced vocabulary can actually make speaking harder. The problem is not knowing those words. Knowing them is excellent. The problem is believing you must use them to prove that your English is good. You don't. If funny expresses exactly what you mean, say funny. If something made you laugh a lot, maybe hilarious is better. If you enjoyed watching something even though it wasn't particularly funny, maybe entertaining fits. Natural vocabulary is not about choosing the hardest word. It is about choosing the right word for the meaning and situation. That distinction matters. Imagine your coworker asks, "Can you finish this today?" You could answer, "I think so, but I need another hour." Clear, natural, professional. You don't improve it by saying, "I believe completion should be achievable within an additional 60-minute period." More complicated does not mean more fluent. In fact, one sign that you are becoming truly comfortable with English is that you stop being afraid of simple words. You realize, simple can be powerful. Listen to everyday expressions fluent speakers use constantly. "I have no idea. That makes sense. It depends. I don't think so. We'll see. I'm not into it. It's not a big deal. I didn't mean that. That's the thing. I guess you're right." None of these expressions would impress someone looking at an advanced vocabulary list, but they are incredibly useful because people actually say them. And there is another layer to this problem. Sometimes learners do not only choose advanced words, they build overly formal relationships between sentences. They learn, furthermore, moreover, nevertheless, consequently, therefore, excellent words, very useful in writing. But imagine a friend asks, "Why don't you like that gym?" And you answer, "The membership is expensive. Furthermore, it is located far from my house. Moreover, the equipment is relatively old. Therefore, I prefer another gym." You sound like you are presenting research findings. In conversation, you might simply say, "It's pretty expensive, and it's quite far from my house. The equipment is kind of old too, so I usually go somewhere else." Notice something important. The second version is not less intelligent. The idea is exactly the same, but the language matches the situation. That is what naturalness is. Now imagine someone asks, "Why did you leave your old job?" A learner trying to sound advanced might say, "I departed from my previous employment because I desired enhanced opportunities for professional development." But in normal conversation, "I left because I wanted better opportunities to grow." Or even, "I just felt like I wasn't growing there anymore." That second version sounds more personal because it sounds like a person talking, not a document speaking. And this is an important question to start asking yourself. Am I speaking to communicate or am I speaking to demonstrate my English? When your goal becomes demonstrating English, you start performing. You choose words because they look impressive. You build sentences that are longer than necessary. You avoid basic vocabulary. You become nervous about repeating simple words. And slowly, the listener disappears from your attention. You are no longer talking to someone. You are trying to produce a perfect English sample. That is exactly when English begins to sound unnatural. Real conversation is cooperative. The listener says something, you react. You add something, they respond. You clarify, you laugh. You change direction. Nobody is secretly giving you points for using the word nevertheless. They simply want to understand you and connect with what you are saying. Now let me show you another important difference. There is nothing wrong with advanced vocabulary when it comes naturally and precisely. Suppose someone asks, "How was the presentation?" You say, "It was confusing." Fine, but maybe the presentation was not confusing. Maybe it was overwhelming because there was too much information. If overwhelming comes naturally and expresses the idea better, use it. That is good vocabulary. But if you already know exactly what you mean with a simple word and you interrupt yourself because you want to replace it with something that sounds more advanced, you are sacrificing flow for appearance. Natural speakers don't constantly upgrade their vocabulary while talking. They choose words according to what they want to express. Sometimes those words are sophisticated, sometimes they are incredibly basic. Both belong in fluent English. This is especially important when expressing emotions. Learners sometimes search for complicated emotional vocabulary when the strongest natural sentence is extremely simple. Imagine someone asks, "How did you feel when you heard the news?" You could say, "I was devastated." Perfect if that is genuinely what you mean. But you could also say, "I honestly didn't know what to do," or "It really hurt," or "I couldn't believe it," or "I was so happy I couldn't stop smiling." Simple language can carry enormous emotion. You do not need to decorate every feeling with difficult vocabulary. Now let's make this practical. For the next few days, whenever you are speaking and two versions appear in your head, ask yourself 3 questions. Which one would I actually hear in this situation? Which one expresses my meaning more clearly? Which one can I say without destroying my flow? If the simple version wins, use it confidently. Suppose someone asks, "What did you think of the book?" Your first thought, "I liked it, but the beginning was a little slow." Excellent. Do not automatically replace it with, "I found the opening section somewhat tedious," unless tedious is genuinely the meaning you want. Suppose someone asks, "Are you going to the party?" You think, "Probably not. I'm really tired." That is enough. You do not need, "I am unlikely to attend due to considerable exhaustion." Your English does not become more valuable because every sentence becomes heavier. Now there is a useful exercise I want you to try. Take 5 formal sentences and turn them into something you would actually say to a friend. For example, formal, "I am unable to attend the meeting due to a prior commitment." More conversational, "I can't make it, I already have something planned." Formal, "I would appreciate it if you could provide additional information." Conversational, "Could you tell me a little more about it?" Formal, "I have not yet reached a final decision." Conversational, "I haven't decided yet." Formal, "I do not possess sufficient knowledge regarding that subject." Conversational, "I don't really know much about that." Formal, "The experience did not meet my expectations." Conversational, "It wasn't as good as I expected." Practice this regularly and you will begin developing something extremely important: register awareness. That means understanding that English changes depending on the situation. You do not speak to your best friend exactly the way you write a business email. You do not speak to your manager exactly the way you speak to your brother. You do not tell a funny story using the same language you use in an academic essay. Good English is flexible. And the more fluent you become, the more comfortable you should become moving between these different versions of English. So do not throw away advanced vocabulary. Keep learning it. But stop treating advanced vocabulary like expensive clothes that must be worn everywhere. Sometimes the situation needs something formal. Sometimes it needs something precise. And sometimes the most natural thing you can say is simply, "Yeah, I get what you mean." Your English does not need to impress people in every sentence. It needs to fit the person, fit the moment, and carry your meaning without getting in the way. Because the moment you stop trying to sound advanced, something surprising often happens. You start sounding more advanced. Not because your words became harder, because your choices became better, and that is a much deeper sign of fluency. Habit 3. You translate the idea correctly, but you translate the habit wrong. Sometimes your English sounds unnatural even when nothing is obviously wrong with the sentence. The grammar works, the vocabulary makes sense, the listener understands you. But a fluent speaker would probably express the same idea differently. Why? Because languages do not simply use different words, they have different habits. Imagine someone calls you and asks, "Where are you?" You want to say that you are traveling toward them right now. Depending on your first language, your brain may construct a sentence by translating exactly how that idea is normally expressed there. But English already has a very natural habit for this situation. "I'm on my way." That little sentence is more valuable than knowing several advanced words for travel, because it belongs to a real situation. Or imagine someone explains something and you finally understand. You could construct, "Now I am understanding what you are saying." The meaning is obvious. But English naturally gives you, "Oh, I see what you mean." Someone suggests an idea you think is reasonable. Instead of constructing a formal response, "Your suggestion appears reasonable to me," you can simply say, "That makes sense." Someone apologizes for something small. "Sorry, I'm a few minutes late." You don't need to build, "There is no problem regarding your lateness." English already has, "No worries," or "It's fine," or "Don't worry about it." This is what I mean by an English habit. There are situations that happen again and again in life, and English has developed common ways of handling them. The more of those patterns you recognize, the less you need to translate, and this is where many intermediate learners get trapped. They think, I need to stop translating every single word. That is true, but incomplete. The deeper goal is to stop translating the entire communication habit, because sometimes you are not translating individual words at all. You are translating the way your first language organizes politeness, disagreement, surprise, invitations, requests, apologies, opinions, and emotions. The English words may be correct, but the social pattern underneath them may still come from another language. Let's look at something very simple. Someone offers you food. Do you want some? Maybe your first language has a particular polite way of refusing. If you translate that pattern directly, you may produce something grammatically understandable but unusual. In everyday English, you might simply say, "No thanks, I'm good," or "I'm okay, thanks." Now imagine someone asks, "Want to come with us?" You are interested, but you need more information. Instead of trying to produce a complete formal response, you might naturally say, "Maybe, where are you going?" That is how conversation works. One situation creates a familiar type of response. This is why I want you to change the way you collect English. Do not only organize English by vocabulary topics, food words, travel words, business words, weather words. Start collecting English by situations. For example, when you need time to think, let me think. That's a good question. I'm not sure, actually. I've never really thought about it. Now imagine someone suddenly asks, would you ever move to another country? You don't need to freeze while searching for the entire answer. You can enter naturally. I've never really thought about it. Maybe. You have bought yourself thinking time without leaving the conversation. Now collect English for another situation. When you don't understand. Sorry, what do you mean? Could you explain that? I'm not sure I follow. What do you mean by that? These phrases are much more useful than knowing the dictionary definition of clarification, because when confusion happens, they are ready. Now, when you partly agree, this is a situation learners often struggle with. They know, I agree, and I disagree. But real opinions are rarely that simple. English gives you, I see what you mean, but that's true, although I agree to some extent. Maybe, but I think. Imagine someone says, working from home is always better than working in an office. You don't completely disagree. So instead of forcing yourself into yes or no, I see what you mean, but I think it depends on the person. That sounds natural because the language matches the relationship between your idea and theirs. Now, when something surprises you, learners often focus on answering the information instead of reacting to it. Friend, I quit my job yesterday. Learner, why did you quit your job? Nothing terrible about that, but compare. Wait, really? What happened? That little reaction changes everything. Or, I met my favorite actor yesterday. Natural possibilities. No way. Where? Seriously? You're kidding. How did that happen? The English is incredibly simple, but it sounds alive because you are using the habit of reacting before continuing. Now think about bad news. Someone says, I didn't get the job. You could say, that is bad. Understandable. But English offers, I'm sorry to hear that. Or casually, oh no, that's disappointing. Then, are you going to apply somewhere else? Notice what happened. Reaction first, conversation second. That is a habit worth learning. Now let's look at another area where translation creates unnatural English. Requests. Maybe you know all the necessary vocabulary, but you build the request according to the politeness system of your own language. In English, small changes can make requests feel much more natural. Instead of, give me your pen, you might say, can I borrow your pen? Instead of, explain this to me, you might say, could you explain this to me? Instead of, send me the file. In a work situation, could you send me the file when you get a chance? The meaning is similar, but the relationship between the speakers is being managed differently, and natural English lives inside those small choices. Now consider invitations. Someone asks, do you want to grab coffee later? You want to accept. You do not need, yes, I would like to drink coffee with you later. You can say, yeah, sounds good, or sure, I'm in, or yeah, what time? You cannot learn this type of English efficiently by studying isolated vocabulary. You learn it by noticing. When this happens, what do people normally say? That question is powerful. Let me give you another example. Imagine you accidentally interrupt someone. You could construct, "Please continue your speaking." The listener understands. But English has a much more natural conversational habit. "Sorry, go ahead." 2 words, "Go ahead." Extremely useful. Someone asks permission. "Can I sit here?" "Yeah, go ahead." Someone stops speaking because you interrupted. "Sorry, go ahead." Someone is waiting for permission to begin. Go ahead. This is why natural English can sometimes seem simpler than learner English. Fluent speakers have thousands of small expressions that handle common situations quickly. Learners often build a brand new sentence every time. Think of it like this. Imagine every time you wanted to open a door you had to build a new key. That would be exhausting. But if you already have the right key, you simply use it. Common English phrases are like those keys. A situation appears, your brain recognizes it. The phrase comes. Someone thanks you. No problem. Someone surprises you. No way. You need time. Let me think. You understand. I see what you mean. You agree. Exactly. You partly agree. I get what you're saying, but you forgot. It completely slipped my mind. You don't care which option, either one is fine. You change your decision. Actually, I changed my mind. You want clarification? What do you mean? You cannot attend. I can't make it. Notice that last one. A learner may know make as create. So, I can't make it may initially look strange, but in context it is completely natural. Are you coming tonight? Sorry, I can't make it. This is exactly why translating word by word is not enough. The phrase has to be learned as something English does in that situation. Now here is a practical method that can change your speaking. For the next week, choose one situation per day. Not one vocabulary topic, one situation. Day 1. Meeting someone you haven't seen for a long time. Collect natural English. It's been a while. How have you been? What have you been up to? Day 2. You don't understand someone. Collect, sorry, I didn't catch that. Could you say that again? What do you mean by? Day 3. Someone tells you surprising news. Collect, seriously? No way. I had no idea. What happened? Day 4. You disagree politely. Collect, I'm not sure I agree. I see it a little differently. I get your point, but. Day 5. You need time to answer. Collect, let me think. That's a tough one. I've never thought about that before. Day 6. You need to refuse something. Collect, I'd love to, but I can't. Maybe another time. I don't think I can. Day 7. You want to end a conversation naturally. Collect, anyway, I should get going. It was good talking to you. I'll talk to you later. Now something important happens. You are no longer studying English as a giant collection of words. You are building a library of situations, and real conversation is made of situations. Someone invites you, someone disagrees, someone interrupts, someone apologizes, someone gives you good news, someone gives you bad news, someone asks your opinion, someone says something you don't understand, someone changes the plan, someone asks you to wait, someone tells a joke. Someone wants your advice. If your brain already has natural English connected to those moments, speaking becomes much faster, because you don't need this process. Situation, first language, build meaning, translate, check grammar, speak. You are trying to build. Situation, English. Someone says, sorry I'm late. Your brain immediately gives, no worries. Someone says, I got promoted. Your brain gives, that's amazing, congratulations. Someone says, I don't think this plan will work. Your brain gives, really? Why not? That direct connection is what you want, and you can train it. Here is an exercise. Choose a situation and imagine it vividly. You are at a cafe. Your friend says, sorry, traffic was terrible. Do not translate. React immediately. It's fine. I just got here too. Next situation. Someone tells you, I'm moving to Canada next month. React. Really? I didn't know that. Why Canada? Next. Your coworker asks, can you help me with this later? React. Sure. Just let me finish this first. Next. Your friend asks, do you want to go out tonight? You are tired. I think I'll stay home tonight. maybe tomorrow. This is speaking practice that actually resembles conversation. And now I want you to notice something deeper. Naturalness is not only inside your sentence, it is also inside what you choose to say next. If someone tells you, "I just came back from Japan," a learner may think, "What grammatically correct sentence can I produce about Japan?" But a natural conversational instinct asks, "Oh, nice, how was it?" Then, "How long were you there?" Then maybe, "What was your favorite place?" You are no longer performing English. You are having a conversation. That distinction is enormous. So the next time you catch yourself translating, do not become angry with yourself. Translation is a normal part of learning. Instead, ask, "Have I seen this situation in English before?" If yes, remember how English handled it. If not, pay attention the next time you hear that situation in a movie, podcast, interview, or real conversation. And when you find a useful expression, do not only write the phrase, write the situation beside it. Not, "I can't make it =" definition." Instead, "Someone invites me somewhere, but I cannot go, sorry, I can't make it." Not, "That makes sense =" definition." Instead, "Someone explains something and I understand their reasoning. Yeah, that makes sense." Not, "Go ahead =" definition." Instead, "Someone is waiting for permission to continue, go ahead." Now your brain knows when to reach for the English, and that is the breakthrough, because sounding natural is not about translating your thoughts faster and faster. It is about reaching a point where, in familiar situations, there is less and less to translate. The situation happens, and English answers it. Habit 4. You speak like a textbook because you finish every sentence too perfectly. Here is something your English teacher probably encouraged you to do. Always answer in a complete sentence. Someone asks, "Do you like coffee?" You answer, "Yes, I like coffee." Someone asks, "Did you watch the movie?" You answer, "Yes, I watched the movie." Someone asks, "Are you tired?" You answer, "Yes, I am tired." Grammatically, perfect. But in a real conversation, people usually don't keep repeating information that everybody already knows. Someone asks, "Did you watch the movie?" You might simply say, "Yeah, last night," or "Yeah, loved it," or "Not yet, is it good?" Someone asks, "Are you tired?" You might say, "A little, exhausted, yeah, long day, not really." Notice what happened. Some of those responses are not beautiful, complete textbook sentences, but they sound completely normal because the conversation already provides the missing information. If someone asks, "Want some coffee?" you don't need, "Yes, I would like some coffee." You can simply say, "Yeah, please." That is enough. The other person already knows what you are talking about. This is one of the most important differences between written English and spoken English. Writing often needs to carry its own context. Conversation shares context between two people, and because the context is shared, speakers can leave things out. This is why natural conversation is full of "probably," "not really," "maybe later," "sounds good," "me too," "not yet," "a little," "pretty much," "I guess," "why not," "depends," "could be." These tiny responses are not incomplete English in the way many learners imagine. They are complete communication, and that distinction matters. You do not need a complete grammatical sentence every time. You need enough language to complete the meaning. Imagine your friend says, "I'm starving." You could answer, "I am also very hungry," correct? But most people would probably say, "Me too." Your friend says, "That meeting was exhausting." You, "Seriously?" Or, "Tell me about it." Someone says, "It's freezing outside." You, "I know." These responses are short, but they feel alive because they respond directly to the moment. Now compare that with a learner who has been trained to produce full sentences every time. Friend, "That meeting was exhausting." Learner, "Yes, I also think that the meeting was exhausting." The sentence is correct, but something feels heavy. Why? Because the learner is rebuilding information that has already been established. Natural conversation often moves forward instead. "That meeting was exhausting." "I know. I thought it would never end." Now the second speaker has reacted and added something new. That is much more conversational. This gives you a powerful rule. Don't repeat the question when the listener already knows the question. If someone asks, "What time did you get home?" you don't need, "I got home at approximately 11 o'clock. Just, around 11. Then maybe, "Traffic was terrible." Now you have answered and opened another door. Someone asks, "How long have you been learning English?" Instead of, I have been learning English for 3 years, you can naturally say, about 3 years now. Then, but I've only been taking speaking seriously for the last few months. That sounds much more like conversation. The first answer was grammatically complete. The second answer is conversationally complete. And that is what I want you to begin noticing. Now there is another reason learners sound textbook-like. They try to make every thought beautifully organized before allowing it to leave their mouth. Real speech is messier. People begin sentences and change direction. They add information halfway through. They pause. They correct themselves. They remember something late. They say things like, actually, wait, well, I mean, or maybe, come to think of it. The thing is, anyway, this does not mean fluent speakers are careless. It means speaking happens in real time. You are watching someone think while they talk. Imagine someone asks, are you going away this weekend? A perfectly prepared textbook answer might be, no, I am not going away this weekend because I have several tasks that I need to complete at home. A real answer might sound more like, probably not. I've got a few things to finish at home, so yeah, I think I'll just stay here. Notice the movement. Probably not. Immediate answer. I've got a few things to finish. Reason. So, yeah, the speaker is thinking. I think I'll just stay here. Decision. That small amount of natural imperfection makes the sentence feel spoken rather than written. Now imagine someone asks, what did you think of the new restaurant you could produce? I thought the restaurant was good, but I believe the prices were too high. Fine, but naturally, it was good, a little expensive though. Or, pretty good actually, just way too expensive. Again, shorter, but not weaker. In fact, sometimes shortening your English makes it stronger. Compare. I was extremely surprised when he told me that information, with, I couldn't believe it, which feels more alive. Or, I am not interested in participating in that activity, versus, I'm not really into that. Or, I have not made a decision about that matter yet, versus, I haven't decided yet. Natural conversation often removes everything that does not need to be there. This is why learning contractions matters too. If you always say, I do not know, I cannot come, I have not seen it, I would not do that, your English may sound more formal than you intend. In ordinary conversation, you will constantly hear, I don't know, I can't come, I haven't seen it, I wouldn't do that. Contractions are not lazy English. They are a normal part of spoken English. But this habit goes deeper than contractions. You also need to become comfortable with fragments. Suppose someone shows you a new apartment. You might react, really nice. Then, much bigger than your old place. Then, and that view. None of those needs to become a formal sentence for the conversation to work. The situation supplies the meaning. Or imagine your friend tells you, I'm thinking about quitting my job. You might say, seriously? Then, because of your manager? Your friend, mostly, yeah. You, makes sense. Look at that conversation. Almost nothing looks like a traditional grammar exercise. Yet every line is understandable. Every response has a purpose. Every person knows exactly what the other means. That is spoken language. Now, I want to be careful here because I don't want you to misunderstand this lesson. I am not saying stop using complete sentences. You need complete sentences constantly, especially when you are explaining an idea, telling a story, describing something complicated, or speaking in a more formal situation. The problem begins when you believe every response must be complete, polished, and self-contained. Natural speakers constantly move between full sentences, short sentences, fragments, reactions, questions, and tiny acknowledgments. That variation gives conversation rhythm. Imagine every sentence in a song had exactly the same length. It would become predictable. Conversation works similarly. Listen. How was the interview? Good, I think. Just good? Well, the first part went really well. Then they asked me this question about my previous job, and I kind of messed up my answer. Oh no, yeah. But honestly, the rest was fine. When will you know? Probably Friday. Look at the variety. Short, long, question, reaction, explanation. That is conversational rhythm. Now compare it with, how was the interview? I think that the interview was good. Why do you think the interview was good? I think the interview was good because the first part of the interview went well. correct English, but it feels like two people completing an exercise. That is exactly the difference you need to hear. Now here is a practical exercise. I call it the cut it in half exercise. Take a correct answer and ask, what can I remove without losing the meaning? Question, are you coming tomorrow? Textbook, yes, I am coming tomorrow. Cut it, yeah, definitely. Question, did you finish the report? Textbook, no, I have not finished the report yet. Cut it, not yet, almost done. Question, do you want to eat now? Textbook, no, I do not want to eat now because I am not hungry. Cut it, not yet, I'm not really hungry. Question, was the movie good? Yes, I thought the movie was very good. Cut it, yes, surprisingly good. Question, have you been there before? Textbook, no, I have never been there before. Cut it, no, first time. Now notice something. Shortening the answer does not mean the conversation has to become shorter. Often the opposite happens. Because instead of wasting energy repeating the question, you can add new information. Did you enjoy the trip? Instead of, yes, I enjoyed the trip, try, yeah, loved it. We stayed right near the beach. Now the other person has something to ask about. Really, which beach? Conversation continues. Or, did you like the course? Instead of, yes, I liked the course very much, try, yeah, especially the speaking part. I just wish we'd had more practice. Now your response contains personality. This is a beautiful principle. Use fewer words to repeat what is already known, and more words to add what is new. That alone can make your English feel much more natural. Now let's practice another situation. Someone asks, do you work from home? You could say, yes, I work from home. Nothing wrong, but most of the time, yeah, I go into the office maybe once a week. Better conversation. Someone asks, do you cook? Instead of, yes, I like to cook food, try, a little, mostly simple stuff. Now perhaps they asks, like what? And the conversation develops naturally. Someone asks, do you exercise every day? Instead of, no, I do not exercise every day, try, not every day, maybe 3 or 4 times a week. You answered naturally and gave the listener more information. This is what good conversational English does. It does not simply complete grammatical requirements. It creates the next moment of conversation. And here is something else you should practice. React before you explain. Suppose someone asks, did you hear that James is moving to Australia? Instead of immediately producing, no, I did not hear that James is moving to Australia. Try, what, really? Then, no, I had no idea. The reaction comes first because you are a person hearing surprising news, not a student answering a comprehension question, or, they canceled the flight. Instead of, it is unfortunate that they canceled the flight. Try, oh no, seriously? Then, what are you going to do? That is human English. Now I want you to listen differently the next time you watch a movie, interview, vlog, or real conversation. Don't only listen for impressive vocabulary, listen for what people leave out. Notice how often someone answers with 2 words. Notice how often they don't repeat the verb from the question. Notice how often they react before answering. Notice how often they use a fragment. Notice how often they begin with, well, or honestly, or actually. Notice how often their sentence changes direction halfway through. You will begin hearing something you may have ignored for years. Natural English is not a collection of perfect sentences. It is a flow of meaning between people. And once you understand that, you can stop putting every sentence in a suit and tie before allowing it into the conversation. Sometimes, not yet, is enough. Sometimes, sounds good, is enough. Sometimes, no idea, is enough. Sometimes, yeah, probably, is enough. And sometimes you need a full minute to explain exactly what you mean. The skill is knowing the difference, so don't deliberately make your English incomplete. Make it appropriate. When the context already carries half the meaning, let it carry half the meaning. When a reaction is enough, react. When a short answer works, use it. When the idea needs explanation, expand it. That flexibility is what makes spoken English feel alive. Because natural conversation is not about proving that you can finish every sentence perfectly. It is about knowing when you don't need to. Habit 5. You give correct answers, but your reactions don't sound human. You can speak grammatically correct English and still make a conversation feel strangely empty. The reason is often not your vocabulary, pronunciation, or sentence structure. It is that you are so focused on answering correctly that you forget something native and fluent speakers do constantly. They react before they respond. Imagine your friend tells you, "I finally got the job I applied for." You understand everything and reply, "That is very good." There is nothing grammatically wrong with that sentence, but compare it with, "No way, that's amazing, congratulations, when do you start?" The second response feels completely different. It has surprise, happiness, curiosity, and connection. You are not simply proving that you understood the information. You are showing the other person that their information had an effect on you. This is one of the hidden reasons some learners sound like they are doing an English exercise even when their grammar is excellent. In an exercise, your job is usually to produce the correct answer. In a conversation, your job is also to show the other person, "I'm listening. I understand what this means to you. I have a reaction to what you just said." Suppose someone says, "My flight was delayed for 6 hours." A learner might answer, "That is very unfortunate." Correct, but perhaps too distant for an ordinary conversation. A friend might naturally respond, "6 hours, that's awful. What did you do the whole time?" Notice the structure. First comes the emotional reaction, then comes interest. The speaker does not immediately search for a sophisticated sentence. They respond to the experience. Now imagine someone tells you, "I haven't slept properly for 3 nights because I've been working on this project." You could say, "You must be tired." That is perfectly fine. But you could make it warmer and more conversational. 3 nights, you must be exhausted. Are you finally done with it? Again, the vocabulary is not difficult. What makes the response feel natural is that you are emotionally present in the conversation. Many English learners accidentally remove this layer because their attention is somewhere else. While the other person is talking, they are thinking, "What am I going to say? Which tense should I use? What vocabulary can I use? Is my pronunciation going to sound okay?" By the time the other person finishes, the learner has prepared a sentence but has not really prepared a reaction. That is why you need to understand that natural conversation often follows a very simple pattern. React, respond, return. First, react to what you heard. Then respond with your own thought. Finally, return the conversation to the other person with a question or comment when appropriate. Someone says, "I'm moving to another city next month." You might say, "Really? That's a big change. Are you excited about it?" The first part is the reaction. The second acknowledges the meaning of the news. The third gives the conversation back to them. Someone says, "I passed my driving test." You might respond, "Finally, congratulations, how did it go?" Someone says, "I lost my phone yesterday." You might say, "Oh no, did you manage to find it?" Someone says, "I'm thinking about changing careers." You might respond, "Wow, really? What made you start thinking about that?" None of these responses requires advanced English, yet they sound much more natural because they behave like conversation rather than examination answers. This is also why tiny expressions are incredibly important. Learners often ignore words such as "really?" "exactly?" "seriously?" "right?" "Oh no," "nice," "I know," "no way," "that's great," "makes sense." They seem too small to study, but those tiny expressions are doing enormous conversational work. Think about this conversation. "I had to wake up at 4 this morning." 4? Seriously? "Yeah, my flight was at 7. That's brutal. Where were you flying?" Look at how little complicated English is being used. Yet the conversation feels natural because both people are reacting to each other. Now compare it with, "I had to wake up at 4 this morning." "I understand that you woke up at 4 this morning." "Yes, because my flight was at 7. Where was your flight going?" Again, understandable. But the first conversation feels more human because the listener is not simply processing information. They are participating emotionally. You need different kinds of reactions for different situations. When someone tells you good news, you might say, "That's amazing. That's great. Good for you. Congratulations. I'm so happy for you." But these expressions are not interchangeable in every situation. If someone says, "I finally finished cleaning my room," shouting, "I'm so happy for you," may sound overly dramatic unless you are joking. A simple, "nice, finally," may fit better. That teaches us something important. Natural English is not only about knowing reactions. It is about choosing a reaction that matches the size of the moment. Someone says, "I got accepted into my dream university." A bigger reaction makes sense. "That's incredible. Congratulations." Someone says, "I found my keys." You probably do not need, "That is absolutely incredible news." You might simply say, "Oh good, where were they?" Naturalness depends on proportion. Your reaction should fit what happened, your relationship with the person, and the situation. The same applies to bad news. Imagine your friend says, "I didn't get the job." A learner might immediately ask, "Why?" But sometimes the first thing the person needs is not another question. A more natural response could be, "I'm sorry, I know you really wanted that one." Then, after acknowledging the disappointment, you can ask, "Did they give you any feedback?" If someone tells you, "My weekend was terrible, my car broke down on the way home," you might say, "Oh no, that's the last thing you need on a weekend. What happened?" You are not merely collecting facts. You are showing that you understand why the situation was frustrating. This is particularly important when someone shares something emotional. Suppose someone says, "I've been feeling really stressed about work lately." If you immediately answer, "You should organize your time better," your English may be grammatically perfect, but the conversation may feel cold. You move directly into advice before acknowledging the feeling. A more natural response might begin, "Yeah, that sounds exhausting. Has work been especially busy lately?" Maybe later you can offer advice, but first you have shown the person that you heard them. Natural conversation is not a competition to see who can produce the smartest sentence. Sometimes the best English response is simply the one that shows, "I heard you." Now let's look at surprise, because this is another place where learners often sound flat. Someone says, "I've never had coffee in my life." You could respond, "I did not know that." But in a casual conversation you might naturally say, "Wait, really? Never?" That tiny reaction invites the person to explain more. Someone says, "I speak 5 languages." You might say, "5? That's impressive. Which ones?" You repeat the surprising part, react to it, and ask a natural follow-up question. This technique is extremely useful. Repeat the surprising detail. "I drove for 12 hours. 12 hours? In one day? The apartment costs $4,000 a month. 4,000? For that apartment? I haven't taken a vacation in 5 years. 5 years? Seriously?" You do not need to invent an advanced response. The surprising detail itself gives you the reaction. Now let's talk about agreement. Learners sometimes use "I agree" for everything because that is the expression they learned. But everyday English gives you many shades of agreement. Someone says, "That restaurant has gotten really expensive." You could say, "Exactly, it used to be much cheaper." Someone says, "I think we should leave earlier." You might say, "Yeah, probably a good idea." Someone says, "This explanation is much easier to understand." You could respond, "Right? That's what I thought too." Someone explains why they made a decision. You might say, "Yeah, that makes sense." These responses make you sound engaged because you are responding to the exact idea rather than reaching for the same universal phrase every time. Disagreement works the same way. If your only disagreement phrase is, "I disagree with you," your English may sound stronger or more formal than you intend in everyday conversation. Imagine your friend says, "I think that movie was terrible." You could smile and say, "Really? I actually liked it." That is disagreement, but it does not sound like a debate. Someone says, "Working from home is always better." You might say, "I don't know. I think it depends on the person." Someone says, "Learning grammar is useless." You could respond, "I wouldn't go that far. I think grammar helps. It just shouldn't be the only thing you practice." Natural reactions allow you to disagree without turning every difference of opinion into a formal argument. Now there is another reaction that learners often forget: curiosity. Someone tells you something interesting, and instead of asking about it, you immediately start talking about yourself. Friend, "I went hiking this weekend." You, "I like hiking too. I went hiking last year." There is nothing wrong with sharing your experience, but you missed an opportunity to show interest. Try, "Nice, where did you go?" They answer. Then perhaps, "Was it difficult?" After listening, you can connect your own experience. "That sounds great. I haven't been hiking in ages, but I used to go quite a lot." Now the conversation feels balanced. A natural speaker does not only wait for a chance to speak, they help the other person continue too. This is why follow-up questions are so powerful. How did that happen? What happened next? How long did that take? What did you think? How did you feel about it? What are you going to do now? Would you do it again? These questions turn information into conversation. Suppose someone says, I just came back from Italy. You could respond, that's nice. Conversation almost dies. Or you could say, oh, nice. How was it? Where did you go? Now the other person has somewhere to go. They say, mostly Rome and Florence. You respond, I've always wanted to see Florence. Which city did you prefer? Now you are not desperately searching for impressive English. You are simply interested. And interest makes English easier because the conversation itself starts giving you your next sentence. This is a major lesson for learners who constantly think, I don't know what to say. Sometimes you do not need to invent something brilliant. React to what you just heard. Ask about one detail. That detail creates the next part of the conversation. If someone says, I started learning guitar recently, you already have several natural directions. Really? What made you start? How's it going? Is it difficult? What kind of music do you want to play? You do not need an enormous vocabulary bank. You need conversational curiosity. Now I want to give you a practice method that can dramatically improve this habit. When you watch an interview, podcast, movie, or conversation video, occasionally pause after one person speaks but before the other person responds. Imagine the speaker says, I quit my job last month. Pause. What would you say? Maybe, really, what happened? Then play the video and hear the actual response. Do not worry about matching it exactly. Instead ask, did they react first? Did they ask a question? Did they repeat an important detail? Did they show surprise, sympathy, agreement, or curiosity? This trains something vocabulary lists cannot train: conversational instinct. You can also practice with imagined situations. Imagine your friend says, I got engaged yesterday. React immediately. What? Congratulations! How did it happen? Imagine someone says, I missed my flight. Oh no, what did you do? Imagine your coworker says, I'm leaving the company next month. Really? I didn't know that. Where are you going? Imagine your friend says, I finally passed the exam. Yes, I knew you could do it. How did you do? Imagine someone says, I'm thinking about moving abroad. Wow, really? Where are you thinking of going? Do this quickly. Do not give yourself 30 seconds to construct the perfect reaction. Reactions need to become fast because in real conversation they usually happen immediately. And here is an important warning: do not memorize one reaction and use it for everything. If every piece of information gets, really? Your English may become repetitive. I bought a new car. Really? I'm tired. Really? I changed jobs. Really? I went to the supermarket. Really? Eventually you sound like your reaction button is stuck. Build small families of reactions. For surprise, you might use, really? Seriously? No way. I had no idea. Wait, what? For positive news, you might use, that's great, nice, that's amazing, good for you, congratulations. For understanding, you might use right, I see, that makes sense, got it. For sympathy, you might use, that's tough, I'm sorry to hear that, that sounds stressful, oh no. For agreement, you might use exactly, definitely. I know what you mean, that's true. You do not need 50 expressions in each category. A few natural options that you can use automatically are far more valuable than a huge list you cannot access while speaking. But there is one more level to this. Your reaction is not only your words, it is also your voice. Imagine someone tells you, I got the job, and you say in a completely flat voice, that's amazing. The vocabulary says excitement. The voice says you do not care. Now imagine, that's amazing. The same words, but your voice rises, your face changes, your energy matches the moment. This is why natural English cannot be learned only from written sentences. You need to listen. You need to hear how surprise sounds, how sympathy sounds, how uncertainty sounds, how excitement sounds, how friendly disagreement sounds. You do not need to copy someone's accent. You need to notice how meaning changes through tone. Take, really. That single word can express many different things. With rising surprise, really. With excitement, really. That's amazing. With doubt, really. With irritation, really. Same word, different human message. That is why natural speaking is much bigger than grammar. Grammar gives your sentence structure, vocabulary gives you material. But reaction, timing, curiosity, and tone give the conversation life. So here is your challenge for this habit. For 1 week, stop measuring a successful conversation only by how many correct sentences you produced. After each English conversation or speaking practice, ask yourself, did I react to what I heard? Did I show interest? Did I ask a natural follow-up question? Did my voice match what I meant? Did I respond to the person or only to their words? If you practice this consistently, you may notice something surprising. Your English can begin sounding more natural without learning a single new grammar rule. You already know enough English to say, "No way, that's great, that sounds difficult, I know what you mean. What happened? How did it go? Are you serious? That's exactly what I was thinking." The challenge is making those reactions part of your real speaking, because when someone talks to you, they do not only want evidence that you understood the vocabulary, they want to feel that they are talking to another person. So stop trying to make every response impressive. Listen closely enough to be surprised. Listen closely enough to be curious. Listen closely enough to care about what comes next. Then let your English show that reaction. That is when correct English stops sounding like an exercise and starts sounding like a real conversation. Habit 6. You copy pronunciation, but you ignore the rhythm that makes English flow. You can pronounce every word correctly and still sound unnatural. That surprises many learners because pronunciation practice usually focuses on individual sounds. You practice th, r, v, difficult vowels, silent letters, and words that are hard to pronounce. All of that matters. But then you put those correctly pronounced words together and something still feels different. You say, "What are you doing this weekend?" Every word is correct, but it may sound like, "What are you doing this weekend?" 6 separate pieces. A natural speaker is more likely to make the sentence feel like one moving thought. That difference is rhythm. And if you have spent years trying to pronounce every English word perfectly, you may accidentally be doing something that makes your English sound less natural. You are giving every word too much attention. English does not treat every word equally. Some words carry the message. Other words help hold the sentence together. Natural speakers usually make the important words clearer and stronger, while allowing less important words to become quicker, lighter, or less noticeable. Take, "I need to talk to you about something." The important meaning is carried mainly by need, talk, something. The smaller grammatical words are still there, but they do not need the same weight. Now imagine saying, "I need to talk to you about something." Every word receives equal space. Every word sounds carefully produced. The grammar is perfect. The pronunciation may even be perfect, but the sentence feels mechanical. This is one reason learners sometimes say, "I know my pronunciation isn't terrible, so why do I still sound different?" Because naturalness does not live only inside individual words, it lives in the relationship between those words. Think about music. Imagine a pianist playing every note at exactly the same strength, with exactly the same space between every note. Technically, the notes might all be correct, but would it sound musical? Probably not. Language works similarly. English has strong beats, weak beats, pauses, connections, changes in pitch, words that receive attention, words that almost disappear into the sentence. That movement is part of what makes English sound like English. And this is especially important because many learners have developed what I call dictionary pronunciation. They learned a word. They checked how it was pronounced. They practiced it clearly. Then another word. Then another. That is useful. But dictionaries usually teach you how a word sounds by itself. Conversation teaches you what happens when that word has neighbors. And words behave differently when they have neighbors. Take a simple sentence. What do you want to do? If you pronounce every word separately, you may produce something very clear and careful. But in ordinary speech, those words connect. The speaker is not thinking, "What do you want to do?" They are expressing one intention. What do you want to do? The sentence has a shape, a beginning, a movement, a focus, an ending. This is why listening to connected speech can be difficult even when you know every word. You may look at the written sentence and think, "Of course I know these words." Then you hear someone say it naturally and suddenly think, "Where did half the words go?" They usually did not disappear. They became smaller. They connected. They changed slightly because natural speech is optimized for flow, not for displaying every word individually. This affects both listening and speaking. If your brain expects every word to sound like its dictionary form, real English can feel too fast. And if your mouth tries to produce every word like its dictionary form, your English can feel too careful. So improving rhythm can help you on both sides of the conversation. You begin hearing English differently, and you begin producing it differently. Let's look at stress first. Suppose I say, I bought a new phone yesterday. The important new information may be new phone, but now imagine someone thinks I borrowed the phone. I might say, I bought the phone. Now bought carries the contrast. Someone thinks my brother bought it. I might say, I bought it. With stronger emphasis on I. The words can remain almost identical while the stress changes what the speaker wants you to notice. This is powerful, because natural speech is not simply a row of words. The speaker is constantly telling the listener, this part matters. Your voice helps organize the message. Many learners try to communicate importance by adding more words. Sometimes you do not need more words, you need better stress. Imagine someone asks, did you like the movie? You answer, it was really good. That stress communicates enthusiasm. Now, it was okay. The pause and tone tell a completely different story. Or, I thought it was good. That may suggest someone else disagreed. Same vocabulary, different rhythm, different meaning. This is why practicing English only from written text has limitations. Written English tells you what was said. It does not always show you how the speaker meant it. You need your ears for that. Now let's talk about another problem. Learners often put stress on the wrong words because they are trying so hard to pronounce everything clearly. Take, I'm going to meet my friend after work. If every word gets equal energy, the listener receives a flat stream. But imagine the important information is after work. Your voice naturally moves toward that part. Or maybe the listener thought you were meeting your manager. Then friend becomes important. Your rhythm changes according to your meaning. This gives you a much better pronunciation question. Do not only ask, did I pronounce every word correctly? Also ask, did the important part of my sentence sound important? That is a much more conversational question. Now consider pauses. Many learners think natural fluency means never pausing. So they try to remove every silence. They rush. They speak faster than they can think. They lose pronunciation. Then they lose grammar. Then they panic. But fluent speakers pause too. The difference is often where they pause. A nervous learner may break a sentence in unnatural places. I went to the restaurant with my friend because we wanted to try. The thought keeps breaking apart. A more natural speaker tends to pause between meaningful groups. I went to the restaurant with my friend / because we wanted to try the new menu. The pause does not destroy the sentence, it organizes it. This is called phrasing, and it is one of the most useful things you can practice. Take. When I first started learning English, I was afraid to speak because I didn't want to make mistakes. Do not imagine this as one enormous line you must survive without breathing. Hear the thought groups. When I first started learning English / I was afraid to speak / because I didn't want to make mistakes. Now your mouth has 3 manageable pieces, and each piece carries one part of the idea. This helps your listener. It also helps you. Instead of controlling 15 words at once, you are producing small, meaningful groups. This connects directly with what we discussed earlier about learning phrases instead of isolated words. Natural English is often stored, heard, and spoken in chunks. Your vocabulary practice and pronunciation practice should support each other. Take. At the end of the day, you do not need to pronounce it as 5 unrelated words every time. It becomes a unit. As far as I know, 1 unit. I don't know what you mean. 1 thought. Do you know what I mean? 1 conversational unit. The more familiar these groups become, the less effort your mouth needs to produce them, and that is where smoother speech begins. Not by forcing yourself to talk faster, by making common language easier for your mouth to handle. This distinction is important because many learners confuse speed with fluency. They hear fluent English and think, I need to speak faster, so they push themselves. But natural speech is not simply fast speech. Someone can speak slowly and sound completely natural. Someone else can speak extremely quickly and sound nervous, unclear, and unnatural. Fluency is more about continuity, rhythm, grouping, and control than raw speed. Think about a confident speaker telling an important story. They may deliberately slow down. They may pause before the important part. They may stretch a word slightly. They may suddenly speak faster through less important details. That variation keeps speech alive. Now imagine someone asks, how was your interview? You could say quickly, "It was good, I think the first part was fine, but then I got nervous." Fast? Yes. Natural? Not necessarily. Instead, "It was good, I think. The first part went really well, but then I got a little nervous." That tiny pause after "I think" can make the answer sound more thoughtful. The rhythm matches the meaning. That is what you should be chasing, not speed, control. Now let's talk about reductions, because this is where learners often become confused. In natural conversation, small grammatical words frequently receive less emphasis. Words like to, of, and, for, a, the, can may sound weaker when they are not carrying important information. This does not mean you should deliberately swallow everything. And it definitely does not mean you should imitate reductions you cannot hear clearly. The goal is not to manufacture a fake accent. The goal is to stop treating every tiny word as if it deserves the same spotlight. Suppose you say, "I want to go to the store." The main message lives in words like want, go, store. Your speech can move through the smaller words more lightly. If you carefully emphasize, "I want to go to the store," you may sound as though every word is correcting someone, but perhaps someone asks, "Do you want Sarah to go?" Now you might naturally emphasize, "No, I want to go." Suddenly I matters. Stress changes according to context. That is why you cannot learn natural rhythm from one fixed pronunciation rule. You need to listen to meaning in context. And this is where shadowing can become extremely useful, but only if you do it correctly. Many learners shadow like this. They play a sentence, they read the subtitles, then they repeat the words. Technically, they copied the sentence, but they copied only the language, not the performance. A better shadowing session asks, where did the speaker put the strongest stress? Where did they pause? Which words became lighter? Did the voice rise? Did it fall? Did the speaker sound excited, uncertain, annoyed, surprised, relaxed? Which words connected smoothly? What was the emotional intention? Suppose you hear, "I honestly didn't expect it to be that good." Do not simply repeat, "I honestly didn't expect it to be that good." First listen. Maybe honestly is light. Maybe didn't expect carries emphasis. Maybe that good receives the strongest emotional weight. Now copy the shape of the sentence. This is a completely different exercise. You are not training your mouth to reproduce words. You are training your ear and mouth to reproduce spoken movement. Start with very short clips. 5 seconds, maybe 8 seconds. Do not begin with a 3-minute monologue. Choose one natural sentence. Listen without speaking. Then listen again. Now close your eyes if that helps. Try to hear the rhythm rather than the vocabulary. Then imitate it. Record yourself. Play the original. Play yourself. Do not immediately judge your accent. Instead ask, where is my rhythm different? Maybe you stressed too many words. Maybe you paused in the wrong place. Maybe the original speaker connected one phrase while you separated every word. Maybe your final intonation stayed flat while theirs fell naturally. Fix one thing. Repeat. This is far more useful than saying the same sentence 50 times without knowing what you are trying to improve. Now let's talk about intonation. Imagine I say, "You're coming." Depending on how my voice moves, that could sound like a statement, a surprised confirmation, or something else in context. Our voices carry information that punctuation cannot fully show. This matters especially in questions. Learners sometimes memorize a rule like, questions go up. Then every question receives the same exaggerated rising tone. But real English is more varied. Some questions rise, some fall, some move depending on emotion and context. Instead of trying to memorize a complicated map immediately, start by noticing. When you hear, "What happened?" What does the speaker's voice do? When you hear, "Are you serious?" How does surprise change the melody? When someone says, "Really?" How does genuine curiosity sound different from disbelief? When someone says, "That's great," how does sincere excitement sound different from polite but weak enthusiasm? This is why the exact same phrase can communicate different things. Take, "That's interesting," said warmly, it can show real curiosity. Said flatly, it may sound like you do not know what else to say. Said with a particular skeptical tone, it may suggest doubt. The dictionary cannot teach you all of that. Your ears have to learn it. Now here is a mistake I want you to avoid. Do not become obsessed with sounding like one particular native speaker. That is not the goal. English is spoken naturally in many accents around the world. American English has enormous variation. British English has enormous variation. Australian, Irish, Canadian, Indian, Nigerian, Singaporean, South African, and many other English varieties have their own natural rhythms and pronunciation patterns. You do not need to erase your identity. You do not need to make people believe you were born somewhere you were not. Your goal is much more useful, clear, comfortable, expressive English that listeners can follow easily. Rhythm helps you achieve that. You want your important words to be easy to hear. You want your ideas grouped clearly. You want your pauses to support meaning. You want your voice to communicate whether you are asking, reacting, explaining, disagreeing, or joking. That is practical pronunciation. Now let's make this extremely concrete. Take the sentence, "I didn't say he stole the money." Different stress can change what the listener thinks you mean. Stress I, and you may imply someone else said it. Stress say, and perhaps you implied it rather than said it directly. Stress he, and maybe someone else stole it. Stress stole, and perhaps he did something else with the money. Stress money, and perhaps he stole something different. The words stay the same, the grammar stays the same, but the message shifts because stress guides interpretation. That is how powerful rhythm can be. Now imagine you have been studying English for years while focusing almost entirely on grammar and vocabulary. You may have developed the ability to create accurate sentences without developing this musical layer. That is not a failure. It simply means you have reached another part of the language that deserves attention. And the good news is that rhythm is highly trainable. You do not need to learn it through complicated theory. You can train it through focused imitation. Here is a daily exercise I want you to try. Choose one natural English clip between 5 and 10 seconds. Not a dramatic movie speech, not someone speaking unbelievably fast. Choose ordinary conversation. Listen once for meaning, then listen a second time only for stress. Which words stand out? Listen a third time for connections. Which words seem to move together? Listen a fourth time for pauses. Where does the speaker divide the thought? Listen a fifth time for intonation. What does the voice do at the end? Now imitate. Do not stare at the subtitles while you imitate if you can avoid it. Let your ears lead your mouth. Record yourself. Compare. Then repeat the same clip. This may feel slow, but remember, you are not trying to finish 100 sentences. You are teaching your mouth a new movement pattern. 5 seconds learned deeply can be more valuable than 30 minutes of careless repetition. Now let's take another example. Suppose the original speaker says, "I don't really feel like going out tonight." A learner may pronounce each word beautifully but separately. Instead, notice the thought groups. The speaker may naturally treat "I don't really feel like" as a flowing unit, and "going out tonight" as another. You can practice the sentence in chunks first, then connect them. This technique is especially useful if long English sentences feel difficult to pronounce. Do not attack the entire sentence at once. Break it into meaningful groups. Sentence, "I was going to call you yesterday, but I completely forgot." First, "I was going to call you yesterday," then, "but I completely forgot." Then connect them. Now you are training rhythm without overwhelming your mouth. You can do the same with questions. What are you doing after work? Do not focus first on making every individual word perfect. Hear the question as one communicative movement. Imagine you genuinely want to know. That matters, because emotion naturally changes rhythm. If you practice sentences with no intention behind them, your speech may remain flat. So give every practice sentence a situation. Do not simply say, "I can't believe you did that." Imagine your friend has surprised you. Now say it. Do not simply say, "That's exactly what I was thinking." Imagine someone has just expressed the idea you had in your mind. Now say it. Do not simply say, "Are you sure about that?" Imagine someone has told you something you genuinely doubt. Now say it. Your voice needs a reason to move. This is one of the best ways to make pronunciation practice more human. Now let's connect this with the reaction habit we just discussed. Remember, really? That one word is perfect rhythm practice. Imagine 3 situations. Your friend says, "I won the competition." You respond with excited surprise. Really? Now someone tells you something difficult to believe. "I haven't used the internet in 10 years. You're really?" May sound skeptical. Now someone explains an interesting fact you genuinely want to know more about. Really? The word remains the same, but your voice tells 3 different stories. Practice that. It teaches you something important. Natural pronunciation is connected to intention. If you know what you mean and how you feel about it, your voice has a direction. Now here is another exercise. Take a sentence and say it with different emotional intentions. Sentence: I didn't know that. Say it with surprise. Say it with embarrassment. Say it with genuine curiosity. Say it as if the information changes everything. You will notice that the sentence begins sounding different without changing a single word. This is valuable because real conversation is emotional. Not dramatic all the time, but human. And human voices move. Now, if your English currently sounds flat, do not try to fix it by becoming theatrical. That will create another kind of unnaturalness. You do not need huge movements in pitch. Start small. Listen, notice, imitate. Let your voice gradually become more responsive to meaning. There is also a listening benefit here that many learners underestimate. When you begin studying rhythm, real English starts becoming easier to decode. Before you may hear, "What do you want to do?" and think, "What was that?" But after enough listening, your brain becomes better at recognizing that spoken language changes shape when words connect. You stop expecting every word to arrive separately. You begin hearing phrases. That is a major step in listening comprehension. Instead of hearing 7 mysterious sounds, you hear one familiar conversational unit. This is why listening and speaking are deeply connected. When your ear becomes sensitive to rhythm, your mouth receives a better model. When your mouth practices natural grouping, your ear becomes more prepared to recognize those groups in other speakers. They improve each other. Now imagine doing this for 1 month. Every day you choose only 10 seconds of natural conversation. 10 seconds. You listen carefully. You notice the stressed words. You notice the weak words. You notice where the thought breaks. You notice the tone. You imitate it. You record yourself. You compare. You repeat. After 30 days, you have not simply repeated English for 5 hours. You have deeply studied around 5 minutes of real spoken English. 5 minutes may sound small, but those 5 minutes contain hundreds of examples of rhythm, linking, stress, reductions, reactions, pauses, and intonation. And because you studied them deeply, your brain begins recognizing patterns. You may suddenly notice yourself saying, "I don't know," more smoothly. Or, "What do you mean?" comes out as one natural unit. Or your sentences stop sounding like word, 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 and begin feeling more like thought, thought, thought. That is progress. And here is the most important thing I want you to remember from this habit. Do not chase a perfect accent. Chase natural movement. Do not ask only, "Did I pronounce this word correctly?" Ask, "Did I say this thought naturally? Did the important words stand out? Did the smaller words support them? Did I group the sentence in a way that was easy to follow? Did my voice match my meaning? Did I pause where the thought naturally changed? Did I sound like I was communicating something, or simply reading words aloud?" Those questions will take your pronunciation practice to a completely different level. Because your listener does not hear your words one at a time, they hear the whole movement of your English. And when that movement becomes smoother, something interesting happens. You may still have your accent. You may still pronounce certain sounds differently from another speaker. You may still make occasional mistakes, but your English starts feeling easier to follow, more relaxed, more expressive, more conversational, and much more natural. So the next time you hear a fluent speaker, don't immediately chase the difficult vocabulary. Listen beneath the words. Listen for what gets stronger. Listen for what becomes lighter. Listen for what connects. Listen for where the speaker waits. Listen for where the voice rises. Listen for where it settles. Listen to the sentence as if it were a small piece of music. Then copy that, because words tell the listener what you are saying. But rhythm helps those words sound like they actually belong together. Habit 7. You keep asking, "Is this correct?" instead of, "Would people actually say this?" There is one question that probably helped you learn English for years. Is this correct? Is this tense correct? Is this preposition correct? Is this sentence structure correct? Is this word correct here? That question matters. It protected you from mistakes and helped you build a solid foundation. But there comes a point where the same question can quietly hold you back, because a sentence can be correct and still not be the sentence people would normally choose. And if you have reached the stage where people understand your English but you still feel that something sounds slightly stiff, translated, overly formal, or textbook-like, this may be the question you need to change. Imagine your friend tells you, "I'm going to stay home tonight." You want to say that you will do the same. You could say, "I will also remain at home tonight." Can we understand it? Absolutely. Could there be a context where it works? Yes. But between friends, you would much more naturally hear, "Yeah, me too," or "Same, I'm exhausted." The difference is not simply grammar. The difference is choice, and natural English is full of these choices. A learner often asks, "Can I say this?" A stronger question is, "Would people normally say this in this situation?" Those are not the same question. You can say many things, but fluent communication depends on knowing which option fits the moment naturally. Suppose someone asks, "Did you enjoy the party?" You answer, "Yes, I enjoyed the party very much." Correct. But perhaps what would come more naturally is, "Yeah, it was really fun," or "Yeah, I had a great time," or "It was good, I just wish I'd stayed longer." Again, none of these alternatives uses extraordinary vocabulary. Natural English is often not about knowing more English. It is about choosing better from the English you already know. And this is why some learners reach an uncomfortable stage. They have studied grammar for years. They know thousands of words. They can read difficult articles. They can understand complicated explanations. Yet when they hear themselves speaking, something feels different from the conversations they hear around them. They start thinking, "Maybe I need more advanced vocabulary," so they learn more. Then, "Maybe I need more grammar," so they study more rules. Then, "Maybe my accent is the problem," so they attack pronunciation. Those things can help. But sometimes the real missing skill is simpler. You have trained yourself to produce possible English, but not yet trained yourself to notice preferred English. That difference is enormous. Imagine someone asks, "Are you free tomorrow?" A learner may carefully answer, "Yes, I am free tomorrow." Nothing wrong. But a friend might simply say, "Yeah, I should be. Why?" That why is important. It shows that the speaker is not only answering the grammar of the question, they understand the purpose behind the question. If someone asks whether you are free tomorrow, there is probably a reason. Natural speakers respond not only to the words but to what is happening socially. That is a much deeper level of language. Someone asks, "Have you eaten?" Perhaps they are not conducting a survey about your eating history. Maybe they are deciding whether to order food. So, "Not yet." "Are you hungry?" may fit naturally. Someone asks, "Are you using this chair?" They probably do not want a detailed description of your relationship with the chair. They want to know whether they can take it. So, "No, go ahead." Does more than, "No, I am not using this chair." Both answer the literal question. Only one immediately responds to the real situation. This is where English begins to feel less like a subject and more like communication. You stop asking only, "What does this sentence mean?" and begin noticing, "Why did this person say it this way right here to this person?" That question teaches natural English. Think about this situation. You arrive at a friend's house. They ask, "Do you want something to drink?" A textbook-trained brain may think, question in present simple, I need a complete answer. Yes, I would like something to drink. Correct. But conversation is not testing the present simple. You might simply say, "Yeah, water would be great," or "I'm good, thanks," or "Sure, what do you have?" 3 different natural answers for 3 different intentions. This is what grammar exercises cannot always teach you. Grammar tells you what structures are possible. Real exposure teaches you which possibility people choose, and you need both. Now let's go deeper. Suppose you want to tell someone you forgot something. You might say, "I forgot to bring it." Perfectly natural. But depending on the situation, you might also hear, "It completely slipped my mind." Now imagine you want to say you don't know much about a topic. You could say, "I don't have much knowledge about this subject." Understandable. But in ordinary conversation, "I don't really know much about it." Now imagine you don't want to participate. You could say, "I am not interested in participating, but with friends, I think I'll pass," or I'm not really into that. Now imagine something does not bother you. You might construct, it does not create a problem for me. But natural options include, I don't mind, that's fine with me, it doesn't bother me. This is the level you should start collecting, not because your original sentence is always wrong, but because English has preferred pathways, and the more of those pathways your brain recognizes, the less your English sounds constructed. Think of walking across a field. Technically, you could walk almost anywhere. But after thousands of people walk through the same field, a path appears. Language is similar. Millions of speakers repeatedly choose certain combinations. That makes sense. I have no idea. I can't make it. It's up to you. I'm not used to it. It depends. I'll let you know. I didn't mean to. That's not what I meant. I didn't catch that. It's not a big deal. I wouldn't worry about it. These pathways become familiar. So when you use them in the right situation, your English feels effortless to the listener. Not because they are impressed, because nothing gets in the way. And that is an important idea. Natural English often becomes invisible. Nobody stops and thinks, wow, what a grammatically impressive sentence. They simply understand you and continue the conversation. That is success. You should not always be trying to make the listener notice your English. Sometimes the highest compliment to your English is that the listener stops thinking about your English at all and starts thinking about your idea. That is why this final habit is so important. For years, your learning may have trained your attention toward errors. You write a sentence and ask, what is wrong? You speak and think, did I make a mistake? You hear someone else and think, which grammar rule are they using? Those questions have value. But now I want you to add another layer. Notice what sounds ordinary. That may sound strange. Learners usually notice unusual English. They hear an advanced word and immediately write it down. They hear an idiom they have never seen and save it. They hear some impressive expression and think, I need that. Meanwhile, the speaker has used 10 extremely natural everyday phrases that the learner ignores because they already understand every word. That is a huge missed opportunity. Imagine you are watching an interview and someone says, I wasn't really sure what to expect, but it turned out to be a lot of fun. A learner might notice a difficult word somewhere else in the interview, but look at the gold sitting inside this simple sentence. I wasn't really sure what to expect. It turned out to be a lot of fun. These are ordinary pieces of English that can be reused constantly. You could say, I wasn't really sure what to expect from the course. I wasn't really sure what to expect when I moved here. The restaurant turned out to be really good. The trip turned out to be more expensive than I expected. The event turned out to be a lot of fun. This is useful English. But because none of it looks particularly advanced, learners often walk straight past it. From now on, when you watch English content, I want you to become interested in boring English. Yes, boring English. The expressions speakers use so naturally that nobody notices them. Someone says, I guess so, notice it. Not really, notice it. That depends, notice it. I was about to. Notice it. I didn't realize, notice it. Turns out, notice it. The thing is, notice it. I don't know if, for some reason, at least, by the way, notice it. Those expressions are the glue of conversation. They may not make an impressive vocabulary post, but they make real speaking much easier. Now here is another powerful shift. When you hear a fluent speaker say something differently from the way you would have said it, do not immediately assume your version was wrong. Instead, compare. Suppose you would say, I don't want to go outside tonight. Then you hear, I don't really feel like going out tonight. Do not think, my sentence is wrong. It isn't. Ask, what difference does their version create? Maybe I don't feel like expresses mood or desire more naturally in that situation. Now you have learned a new option. Another example. You say, I am very tired. You hear, I'm exhausted. Both are natural, different intensity. Another person says, I'm wiped out. Now you have learned a more casual option. The goal is not to replace every sentence you already know. The goal is to develop range. Natural speakers do not have one correct sentence for each idea. They have options, and they choose according to the person, the situation, the emotion, the level of formality, and exactly what they want to emphasize. That is why naturalness is not a list of fixed rules. It is sensitivity to context. Imagine your manager says, "Could you have this ready by tomorrow?" You might respond, "Sure, I'll have it ready." Now imagine your closest friend asks, "Can you send me those photos?" You might say, "Yeah, I'll send them now." Now imagine someone you do not know well asks for a favor. You might become slightly more polite. "Sure, no problem." Or, "Of course, I'll send it over." The basic grammar does not change dramatically, but your choices shift. That is fluency. You are not simply asking, which sentence is correct? You are asking, which sentence belongs here? Now let's look at one of the biggest causes of unnatural English, trying to use a phrase because you learned it, even when the situation does not need it. Maybe you recently learned, "From my perspective." Excellent phrase. Then someone asks, "Pizza or burgers?" And you say, "From my perspective, pizza is preferable." Technically, you have used your new phrase, but perhaps, "Pizza definitely fits better." You learned, "I firmly believe that," useful in certain contexts. Friend, do you think Tom will come? You, "I firmly believe that Tom will attend." Again, possible English, but "yeah, I think so," probably fits the moment. This is why memorizing advanced expressions without learning their register can be dangerous. You learn the phrase, but you do not learn where it lives. So from now on, whenever you save a phrase, save three things: the phrase, the situation, and the relationship. For example, "I appreciate your help." Situation, thanking someone. Relationship, works in many neutral or slightly formal situations. But with your close friend who helped you carry one bag, perhaps, "Thanks, man," or "Thanks, I appreciate it," might fit your relationship better. Another, "Would you mind?" Situation, polite request. Useful when you want to soften what you are asking. Another, "No worries." Situation, responding to a small apology or reassuring someone. Usually casual. Now the phrase has context, and context makes language usable. Without context, your brain may know the expression but choose it awkwardly. This is also why I want you to stop treating every synonym as interchangeable. Vocabulary books often teach big =, large =, enormous =, huge. But real language is more complicated. We naturally say a big mistake, a huge mistake. But some combinations feel more common than others. We say heavy rain, not usually strong rain. We say strong coffee, but heavy traffic. We make a decision, we take a break, we have a conversation, we pay attention, we catch a bus, we miss a chance. You cannot always solve these choices with logic. Sometimes English simply developed that habit, and that is why exposure matters so much. You need to see and hear the language enough times for certain combinations to start feeling familiar. Eventually, you begin noticing that one phrase sounds right before you can explain the grammar behind it. That feeling is not magic, it is pattern recognition. Your brain has seen "make a decision" hundreds of times. So when someone says, "do a decision," something feels unusual. This is the kind of instinct you want to develop, and you develop it by paying attention to real examples, not only rules. Now let me give you a method for doing that without turning your life into a language laboratory. Choose one source of conversational English you genuinely enjoy, maybe a podcast, an interview series, a YouTube creator, a TV show, a conversational audiobook, something where people speak naturally enough for your level. Do not keep changing sources every 5 minutes. Spend enough time with the same speakers that you begin noticing recurring patterns. Now, during 10 minutes of listening, do not collect every unknown word. Instead, collect only 3 things you understood completely but probably would not have said that way yourself. That condition is important, not "what didn't I understand?" but "what did I understand easily, yet wouldn't naturally produce?" Suppose someone says, "I didn't really think much of it at the time." You understand every word, but would you have said it? Maybe not. Save it. Someone says, "I ended up staying longer than I planned." Easy to understand. Would you produce it naturally? Maybe not. Save it. Someone says, "I wasn't really in the mood." You understand. Would it come out of your mouth? Maybe not. Save it. Now you have found your real learning gap. The gap is not between what you know and what you don't know. It is between what you understand and what you can naturally produce. For intermediate and advanced learners, that gap is incredibly important. You may understand, "It slipped my mind." But always say, "I forgot." You may understand, "I can't make it tonight." But always say, "I cannot come tonight." You may understand, I'm not really into it, but always say, I don't like it. You may understand, it's not really my thing, but never use it. You may understand, I haven't gotten around to it yet, but always struggle to explain that you intended to do something and still have not done it. This is where your next level is hiding, not necessarily in words you have never seen, often in phrases you have understood for years but never claimed as your own. So once you find one, do not just write it down, transform it. Suppose your phrase is, I haven't gotten around to it yet. Create real situations. Have you watched that movie? Not yet. I haven't gotten around to it yet. Did you fix your bike? No, I haven't gotten around to it yet. Have you started that book? I bought it, but I haven't gotten around to reading it. Now imagine one real situation from your own life. Say it aloud. Tomorrow, retrieve it again without looking. This is how passive recognition becomes active language. Now let's address another problem. Some learners become so obsessed with sounding natural that they begin copying slang, reductions, and idioms they do not fully understand. That is not the goal either. Natural English is not maximum slang. You do not need to fill every sentence with fashionable expressions. You do not need to imitate a 20-year-old from another country if that style does not fit you. You do not need to say, bro, literally, low-key, you know what I'm saying, every 10 seconds because you heard someone online doing it. Natural English should still sound like you, your age, your personality, your profession, your relationships, your communication style. If you are naturally calm and thoughtful in your first language, you do not need to become loud and hyperactive in English. If you are direct, your English can be direct. If you are warm, your English can be warm. If you enjoy humor, bring humor into your English. Naturalness is not copying someone else's personality. It is giving your personality access to English. And this may be one of the deepest reasons learners sometimes feel uncomfortable speaking. They know enough English to transfer information, but they do not yet know enough everyday patterns to transfer themselves. In their first language, they can tease a friend, they can soften a disagreement, they can sound sarcastic, they can comfort someone, they can tell a story dramatically, they can sound playful, they can express hesitation, they can politely escape an invitation, they can change the subject naturally. Then English begins, and suddenly their personality shrinks. Everything becomes, yes, no, I agree, I don't agree, it is good, it is bad, I don't know. The person is still intelligent, funny, thoughtful, and emotionally expressive, but their English has not yet learned how to carry all of that. This is why natural English matters. Not because you need to impress native speakers, not because having an accent is bad, not because textbook English is useless, but because language should eventually give you enough freedom to sound like yourself. So start collecting the English that gives you personality. If you often hesitate before giving an opinion, I'm not completely sure, but if you like soft disagreement, I get what you mean, I just see it a little differently. If you want to admit you changed your mind, actually, now that I think about it. If you want to correct yourself naturally, wait, that's not what I meant. If you want to make a small confession, to be honest. If you want to explain something complicated, it's hard to explain, but if you want to admit uncertainty, I could be wrong, but if you want to soften an opinion, I don't know, I just feel like. These phrases are not decorations. They allow your thoughts to enter the conversation with the right shape. And here is another shift I want you to make. When you speak English and later realize a fluent speaker might have said something differently, do not punish yourself. Your goal is not to eliminate every unnatural sentence overnight. Use the moment as data. You said, I didn't have mood to go. Later you hear, I wasn't in the mood to go. Excellent. That difference is valuable. Do not just correct the grammar and move on. Take the whole natural pattern. I wasn't in the mood to, then build. I wasn't in the mood to cook. I wasn't in the mood to talk. I wasn't in the mood to go out. Now one mistake has produced a reusable piece of English. That is how you should use corrections, not as proof that your English is bad, as clues showing you how English prefers to move. Another example. You say, I agree with you. You learn, I agree with you. Good. But do not stop there. Listen for the larger family. I completely agree. I agree with you on that. I agree to some extent. I couldn't agree more. I don't necessarily agree. Now one correction expands your conversational range. This is much more powerful than simply writing a red X beside the original sentence. Now let's build a daily routine around this habit. I want you to use a simple 4-step method. Hear it, notice it, personalize it, retrieve it. First, hear it in real English. Suppose you hear, "I didn't think it would be that difficult." Second, notice it. Not because it contains an advanced word, because you could imagine needing that sentence. Third, personalize it. "I didn't think the exam would be that difficult. I didn't think driving here would be that difficult. I didn't think speaking English every day would be that difficult." Fourth, retrieve it later. Close your notes. Imagine the situation. Try to produce the pattern without looking. If it comes, good. If it doesn't, review it and try again tomorrow. This last step is crucial. A notebook full of natural English does not make your speech natural. Retrieval does. You need to pull the language out, again and again, until the path becomes easy. Now combine this with speaking practice. At the end of each day, choose one ordinary question. How was your day? Do not try to give an impressive answer. Give a natural one. Pretty good, actually. I didn't do much in the morning, but I got a lot done later. Then ask yourself, would I actually say this in a conversation? If yes, good. Next, what are you doing this weekend? Not much, probably. I might meet a friend on Saturday, but I haven't decided yet. Simple, flexible, natural. Next, did you like the movie? Yeah, it was better than I expected. The ending was a little weird though. Notice what is missing. No unnecessary advanced vocabulary. No performance, no grammar demonstration, just useful English carrying a real opinion. Now try a more difficult question. Do you think social media is good or bad? A learner may feel pressure to produce an academic answer. In my opinion, social media possesses both advantages and disadvantages in contemporary society. Not necessarily wrong, but if this is a casual conversation, you could simply say, honestly, I think it's both. It's great for staying connected, but it's really easy to waste too much time on it. That sounds natural because the language matches the situation. And notice the phrase, honestly, I think it's both. Very simple, but it gives your answer a human beginning. Then, it's great for useful pattern. It's really easy to. Another useful pattern. Now you are building your answer from conversational pieces rather than academic structures. That is exactly what we want. And there is one final listening exercise that can transform your instinct. The next time you watch a conversation, turn off the subtitles for a moment and stop trying to understand every single word. Instead, listen for recurring conversational moves. How does someone enter the conversation? How do they show they are listening? How do they disagree? How do they hesitate? How do they correct themselves? How do they change direction? How do they tell the listener something surprising? How do they introduce an example? How do they finish the story? How do they hand the conversation back? You may hear, you know what? Actually, the funny thing is, here's the thing. Anyway, so basically, that's why. It turns out, at first, eventually, long story short, these phrases help organize spoken thought. They are not simply vocabulary, they are conversation tools. Once you start hearing English this way, something changes. A podcast is no longer only content. It becomes a demonstration of how people build thoughts. A movie is no longer only entertainment. It becomes a library of reactions and situations. An interview is no longer only information. It becomes a lesson in how people hesitate, explain, disagree, clarify, and tell stories. And suddenly the English around you becomes much more useful. Now think back to all 7 habits. At the beginning, perhaps you believed your English sounded unnatural because you needed harder grammar or a bigger vocabulary. But look at what was actually happening. You were learning single words instead of natural combinations. You were sometimes choosing advanced language when simple language fit better. You were translating not only words but communication habits from another language. You were trying to make every spoken response look like a perfect written sentence. You were answering people without always reacting to them. You were pronouncing words while missing the rhythm connecting them. And finally, you were measuring your English almost entirely with one question. Is this correct? From now on, keep that question. Correctness still matters. But place another question beside it. Does this sound like something people would naturally say in this situation? And then another. Would I actually want to say this? That second question protects naturalness. The third protects your personality. Because you are not learning English to become a perfect imitation of somebody else. You are learning English so that when an idea appears in your mind, you can express it without feeling trapped behind the language. When someone tells you good news, you can react naturally. When someone disagrees, you can respond without freezing. When you need time, you know how to buy it. When you forget a word, you can explain around it. When you have an opinion, you can soften it or strengthen it. When you tell a story, your rhythm carries the listener. When the conversation becomes emotional, your English can carry emotion too. That is a much richer definition of fluency. So tonight, don't open a vocabulary list and try to memorize another 50 impressive words. Find 5 minutes of real conversation. Listen closely. Choose 3 ordinary phrases you understand but would not naturally use yourself. Write down the situation. Make the phrases personal. Say them aloud. Then tomorrow, try to retrieve them without looking. Do that again and again. Not because 3 phrases will magically transform your English, but because you are teaching your brain a completely different way to learn. You are moving from, "What English do I know?" to, "What English can I actually use?" From, "Can I make a correct sentence?" to, "Can I respond naturally in this moment?" From, "How advanced can I sound?" to, "How clearly can I express myself?" And from, "How do I translate this?" to, "How does English naturally handle this situation?" That shift takes time. But once it begins, you will notice something beautiful. The English you have spent years learning starts becoming lighter. You stop fighting every sentence. You stop trying to prove your level with every word. You stop treating conversation like a test you could fail at any moment. You begin listening to the person instead of listening only to your own grammar. You begin responding instead of translating. You begin choosing phrases instead of assembling everything from zero. And slowly, English stops feeling like something you are constantly constructing. It starts feeling like something you can simply use. That is the real destination. Not perfect English, not accentless English, not English filled with the most difficult words you can find. English that fits the moment. English that carries your meaning. English that allows your personality to come through. English that sounds comfortable because you are comfortable using it. So the next time you finish a sentence and immediately wonder, "Was that correct?" Check it if you need to, but don't stop there. Ask the question that can take you into the next stage of your English. How would people naturally say this here? Listen for the answer, notice it, keep it, use it, and little by little you will stop sounding like someone who has only studied English. You will start sounding like someone who knows how to live inside it. If your English is grammatically correct but still feels stiff, translated, or slightly unnatural, do not assume you need another 1,000 vocabulary words. You may already know enough English. What you need now is to change how you use what you know. Stop learning words alone. Learn the phrases they naturally belong to. Stop choosing difficult vocabulary just because it sounds advanced. Choose the language that fits the moment. Stop translating every communication habit from your first language. Notice how English handles real situations. Stop forcing every spoken response into a perfect textbook sentence. Let conversation breathe. Stop giving correct answers without giving human reactions. Stop focusing only on individual pronunciation while ignoring rhythm, stress, and flow. And most importantly, stop asking only, "Is this correct?" Start asking, "Would people actually say this here?" That one question can change the way you listen, the way you study, and eventually the way you speak. Because natural English is usually not hidden inside the hardest words. It is hiding inside ordinary phrases you hear every day and ignore because they seem too simple. That makes sense. I'm not sure. I didn't expect that. I can't make it. It depends. I see what you mean. I wasn't really in the mood. These expressions do not look impressive on a vocabulary test, but inside a real conversation, they are powerful. So from today, listen differently. When you watch an interview, movie, podcast, or conversation, do not only collect what you don't understand. Collect the English you understand perfectly but would never think to say yourself. That is where your next level may be hiding. Take one natural phrase. Notice the situation. Change it to fit your life. Say it aloud. Use it again tomorrow. And slowly, the English you understand will begin becoming the English you actually produce. One day, you will say something without translating it, without checking every word, without trying to sound advanced, and without wondering whether the sentence is perfect. It will simply fit the moment, and you may realize, that sounded like me. That is the goal. Not to erase your accent, not to copy someone else's personality, not to become a walking grammar book, The goal is to let your own thoughts, reactions, humor, opinions, and personality move through English naturally. If this lesson showed you why your correct English can still sound unnatural, subscribe to the channel and continue practicing with us. And before you leave, write this in the comments. I will learn English the way people actually use it. Then choose one natural phrase from today's lesson and use it in your next conversation. Because the final step from correct English to natural English is not learning more and more rules. It is learning to trust the patterns real English has been showing you all along.